Where's the emergency?
Yes.
What township or borough are you in?
I needed permission.
Do you know what police department covers where you're at?
Levittown Township.
Okay. What's your cell phone number?
378.
And what is the emergency?
Her husband is in the bathroom.
Okay, what is wrong with him?
We believe you said, what is wrong?
Okay, how old is he? How many years old is he?
I'm sorry, just get the police.
Ma'am, stop and listen to me. I'm trying to help him. How old is he?
She won't answer me. How old is Mike?
An approximate age, 40, 50, 90?
60.
About 60. What happened to him? Did he hurt himself or did he just fall or what?
We don't know.
Okay. I want you to get next to him so I can ask.
She thinks her son did something to him.
Okay. I need
all over the bathroom.
The caller, who has come over from next door, passes the phone to her husband, who struggles to convince the dispatcher that there is no saving Mike Mohn.
First of all, I need to know if he is awake at all or looking around or moving or flinching his arms or legs at all.
There you go. His head.
Okay, I need to know if he is moving or flinching around at all or if he is awake at all.
No.
Okay, I need you to check and tell me if he is breathing with his chest rising and falling continuously.
Dude, Jesus.
I understand, sir. I'm trying to determine if we're going to start CPR.
He's dead, man. He's in the bed.
Okay. I understand, sir. We don't know he's dead until they get there and check him and try to use an AED and everything. So what I want to do is try to help save him and keep him there until they can check him out.
Okay, what's wrong with him? A
So
mother's
if he's
voice,
not breathing,
shaking,
will you do
struggling to
CPR
form
when
words that will
somebody's there?
shatter her world forever.
He has no
January
head at all.
30th, 2024. The 911 call that launched one of Pennsylvania's most disturbing investigations. A 33-year-old man uploads a 14-minute video to YouTube. In it, he displays the remains of his own father, calls him a traitor, then issues a chilling demand for others to join a violent revolution against federal workers. For hours, the video stays live, spreading, being downloaded, viewed by thousands before platform moderators can react. But this isn't where the story begins. 24 hours earlier, surveillance cameras captured Justin Mohn walking into a sporting goods store. He tries out handguns, settles on a 9mm pistol, buys 2 boxes of ammunition. He tells his mother he's going to a job interview. He's lying. Police will later discover he surrendered his medical marijuana card specifically to pass the background check. This wasn't impulse. This was planning. When officers arrive at the Levittown home, they find evidence that turns an already horrific crime into something unprecedented in Pennsylvania legal history. A USB drive containing photographs of federal buildings, apparent instructions for explosives, a manifesto years in the making, and a suspect who fled to a National Guard facility, calling for armed insurrection. The hunt is on. Justin Mohn must be caught before his documented plans can reach their apocalyptic conclusion. This investigation is based on official court records, forensic evidence, and law enforcement testimony. The footage and facts you're about to see have been verified through multiple sources. This is the case that resulted in Pennsylvania's first ever terrorism conviction under state statute. This is Commonwealth versus Justin Mohn. Middletown Township, Pennsylvania. A quiet suburb of Philadelphia where families have lived for generations. The Mohn family home sat on a tree-lined street in Levittown, indistinguishable from dozens of others in the neighborhood. Inside that home on January 30th, 2024, Denise Mohn made a discovery that would shatter her world. Her husband of decades, Michael F. Mohn, was found deceased in the bathroom. He was 68 years old, a respected federal employee, a career civil engineer with the United States Army Corps of Engineers, a father of 3. The investigation immediately centered on one person, Justin D. Mohn, 33 years old, Michael's son, a man who still lived with his parents, a man who had spent years publishing writings online, a man who had just purchased a firearm days earlier. By nightfall, Justin Mohn was in custody. Not at the family home. Not in Levittown. He was arrested at Fort Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania's National Guard headquarters, after scaling a security fence. In his possession, investigators found a USB device. On that device, photographs of federal buildings, instructions that appeared to outline methods for making explosives, digital evidence that would become central to the prosecution's case. The timeline investigators pieced together revealed meticulous planning. Justin Mohn had surrendered his medical marijuana card in the weeks before January 30th. Under Pennsylvania law, possession of a medical marijuana card prohibited firearm ownership. By voluntarily giving up the card, he created a legal pathway to purchase weapons. This wasn't impulsive. This was strategic calculation. He walked into a licensed firearms dealer, filled out federal background check forms, passed every screening, purchased a pistol with no prior ownership history, no serial number tied to previous crimes. A clean weapon for what prosecutors would later prove was a premeditated act. The weapon became a crucial piece of evidence. Ballistics analysis would later confirm it fired the fatal shot. Striations on the recovered projectile matched the barrel uniquely. No margin for error in the identification. Middletown Township police officers arrived at the Mohn residence on the afternoon of January 30th. The 911 call had come from Denise Mohn. Her voice, captured on emergency recordings, revealed a mother's shock and disbelief. Officers entered the home not knowing what they would find. Standard protocol for domestic calls. Heightened awareness given the nature of the report. What they documented became part of a comprehensive forensic investigation that would span months. Crime scene photographers captured every angle. Evidence technicians collected samples. Measurements were taken. Trajectories calculated. A machete was recovered. A large kitchen knife. Both near the bathroom where Michael Mohn's body was found. Both later tested for trace evidence that would tie them to the sequence of events. Dr. Ian Hood, the forensic pathologist who conducted the autopsy, provided testimony that clarified the sequence of events with clinical precision. Michael Mohn had been shot in the head. The entry wound characteristics indicated a medium-range shot. The shooter stood at least 1 foot away when the trigger was pulled, possibly more. Close enough to ensure the shot would be fatal. Far enough to suggest this wasn't a spontaneous struggle where a weapon discharged during physical confrontation. There were no defensive wounds on the victim's body. No bruising on the hands or forearms that would indicate raised arms trying to block an attack. No scratches suggesting a fight. No torn clothing. No indication he had time to react, to comprehend what was happening, to defend himself against his own son. The absence of these markers told investigators everything. Michael Mohn likely didn't see the weapon until it was too late. Didn't perceive the threat. Trusted the person standing in front of him. That trust cost him his life. After the shooting, Justin Mohn used the machete and knife. The medical examiner's findings were conclusive on sequencing, blood spatter patterns, lividity, temperature. Michael Mohn was already deceased when the secondary actions occurred. This detail became legally significant. It demonstrated that what followed the shooting wasn't self-defense, wasn't heat of passion. It was deliberate action taken with time to think, to choose, to stop. But the physical evidence at the crime scene was only part of what prosecutors would present. The digital footprint Justin Mohn left behind told a darker story. A story of planning, preparation, deliberate choices made over hours and days. Hours after his mother left for work that morning, Justin Mohn uploaded a video to YouTube. 14 minutes long, filmed in the family home using equipment he had set up deliberately. The lighting was adjusted. The camera positioned for maximum clarity. This wasn't spontaneous. He had prepared the setting, rehearsed perhaps, made sure everything would be visible to viewers. The platform's algorithms initially failed to flag the content. Artificial intelligence systems designed to catch violations missed the obvious. For several hours, the video remained accessible, viewable by anyone who stumbled across it, shared in forums, downloaded by users, spreading across the internet before YouTube's human moderators could intervene. In the video, Justin Mohn spoke directly to the camera. His demeanor was calm, almost professorial. He described his father as a 20-year federal employee. He called him a traitor to the nation. He displayed his father's remains as what he termed proof of his commitment to his stated cause. He read from a prepared statement, pages of text, a manifesto detailing grievances he had compiled over years. His complaints ranged across topics: immigration policy, border security, federal spending, urban crime rates, the war in Ukraine, each grievance building on the last, each presented as evidence of systemic corruption requiring dramatic action. Then he issued a call, not a plea, not a suggestion, a demand. He urged others to take similar action against federal employees, to target those working for agencies he deemed corrupt, to join what he described as a necessary revolution against a government he claimed had betrayed its citizens, to escalate, to act, to commit violence in service of political goals. This portion of the video became central to the terrorism charges. Prosecutors would argue that Justin Mohn wasn't simply explaining his own actions. He was attempting to inspire others, to create fear among federal workers, to coerce government employees into resignation through intimidation and threats of violence. The video was eventually removed. YouTube's systems caught up. But by then, screenshots had been captured. The content had been described in news reports, archived on websites beyond YouTube's control. Law enforcement had already been alerted through multiple channels. Tips flooded in from viewers, from people who recognized the address visible in the background, from citizens horrified by what they had witnessed. Michael F. Mohn spent 4 decades building a career in civil engineering. His work with the Army Corps of Engineers focused on geoenvironmental projects in Philadelphia District. Technical work that required precision, patience, a commitment to solving complex problems that most people never see. Projects involving water quality, environmental remediation, infrastructure that protects communities from flooding and contamination. Work that matters even when it goes unnoticed. Colleagues remembered him as methodical, thorough, the engineer who double-checked calculations, who stayed late to ensure reports were accurate, who mentored younger staff members without being asked. Even after his official retirement, Michael returned to work part-time. Not because he needed the money after decades of federal employment. Not because he lacked other interests. Because he found purpose in the work itself. In contributing. In using skills developed over a lifetime to serve the public good. At home, he was the foundation of his family. The steady presence. His wife Denise described their relationship as a partnership built over years of shared decisions and mutual support. They navigated parenthood together, made financial decisions as a team, supported each other through the ordinary challenges that decades of marriage bring. They raised 3 children together, instilled values of hard work, education, integrity, family loyalty, values Michael demonstrated daily through his actions rather than speeches. Michael played guitar, not professionally, not for performance, for himself, for the joy of creating music. He could sit for hours working through songs he loved, teaching himself new techniques, finding relaxation in the repetitive practice that mastery requires. Friends who visited the Mohn home remembered seeing guitars carefully maintained, sheet music organized, a hobby treated with the same care he brought to his professional work. He read extensively, history, biographies, technical journals related to his field, books stacked on nightstands and coffee tables. A reader who valued knowledge for its own sake, who believed understanding the world required continuous learning, who modeled intellectual curiosity for his children. He maintained a regular exercise routine, daily walks, trips to the gym, attention to health that came from understanding the value of physical fitness as people age. Not vanity, pragmatism, a desire to remain capable, independent, able to enjoy retirement actively rather than passively. Friends noted his humility about his professional accomplishments. For decades of government service, projects that improved lives, technical expertise recognized by colleagues. None of it became material for boasting. He never sought recognition, never demanded attention or praise. He simply showed up, did the work, supported those around him, let his actions speak. His son Zachary would later speak about the values their parents emphasized. Work hard at whatever you choose to do. Better yourself through education and experience. Take care of family unconditionally. Be the best you can be, not for external rewards, but for internal satisfaction. Michael embodied those principles daily, lived them without announcing them. made them real through consistent choices. When Justin, his eldest son, struggled to find stable employment after graduating from Penn State, Michael didn't withdraw support, didn't lecture, didn't impose ultimatums. He and Denise continued to provide financial assistance month after month, year after year. They paid for mental health counseling when Justin expressed frustration with his job search and blamed external systems for his difficulties. They offered guidance when Justin would accept it, encouragement when he wouldn't, a place to live while he figured out his path, space to fail and try again. That support continued into Justin's 30s. It never wavered despite the challenges, despite the increasingly concerning online activity, despite police visits warning about rhetoric that was escalating. Michael believed in giving his children every opportunity to succeed, even when success seemed unlikely, even when supporting Justin created tension, even when friends might have questioned the wisdom of continued assistance to an adult child showing troubling patterns. Michael's final act toward his son was continuing to provide a home, continuing to believe in possibility, continuing to offer unconditional love even when that love wasn't reciprocated with respect or gratitude. That faithfulness cost him everything. Justin D. Mohn's trajectory after college followed a different pattern. He cycled through jobs, blamed external systems for his difficulties. The educational system had failed him, he claimed. The federal government created barriers to success. Society itself was rigged against people like him. Online, he found communities that reinforced these beliefs. For years, he published writings expressing anti-government views. His rhetoric grew increasingly aggressive, increasingly specific. He wrote about revolution, about holding officials accountable, about citizens taking action when institutions failed. Police had visited the Mohn home before January 30th, 2024. They warned Justin about his online posts, cautioned him about the language he was using, the implications of his statements. He continued posting. Court documents revealed Justin had written letters to foreign officials. One letter, addressed to Russia's ambassador to the United States, sought refuge in exchange for cooperation. He apologized to President Vladimir Putin for previously claiming to be the Tsar of Russia. He proposed deals, suggested he had valuable information to offer. During a competency hearing in 2024, defense experts presented these letters as evidence of mental health struggles. They argued Justin's grip on reality had deteriorated, that he believed delusions about his identity and importance. The court ultimately ruled him competent to stand trial. Competency, Judge Stephen Sarar later noted, doesn't mean the absence of mental illness. It means understanding the charges, being able to assist in one's own defense. Justin Mohn met that threshold. The investigation extended far beyond the immediate crime scene. Digital forensics teams analyzed Justin Mohn's online activity, search histories, website visits, document creation timestamps. They found evidence of research, searches related to firearms, ammunition, how to legally obtain weapons in Pennsylvania. The timing of these searches aligned with his decision to surrender his medical marijuana card. Cell phone location data placed Justin at specific locations in the days before and after January 30th. Tower pings, GPS coordinates, a trail that investigators followed minute by minute. The USB drive found at Fort Indiantown Gap contained more than photographs of federal buildings. There were documents, notes, what appeared to be planning materials for actions beyond what occurred in Levittown. Investigators interviewed neighbors, co-workers from Justin's previous jobs, people who had interacted with him online. They built a psychological profile, a timeline of radicalization, evidence of premeditation. The prosecution would later describe the case as something resembling a horror film. But this wasn't fiction. Every piece of evidence was documented, photographed, entered into the court record. The weapons used were analyzed. The machete bore distinctive markings. The kitchen knife came from the Mohn family's own home. Familiar objects turned into instruments investigators had to catalog with clinical precision. Forensic analysis of the bathroom where Michael Mohn was found revealed no signs of forced entry, no indication of an ambush. Justin lived in the home, had access to every room, could move freely without raising suspicion. The shot that killed Michael Mohn came from at least a foot away, according to Dr. Hood's testimony, close enough to ensure accuracy. far enough to suggest deliberation rather than a struggle. The absence of defensive wounds told investigators Michael likely didn't perceive a threat, didn't see the weapon, didn't have time to raise his hands, react, protect himself. His son shot him, then methodically carried out actions that took time, required tools, involved decisions made in sequence, not in panic. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania charged Justin Mohn with 16 separate counts. First-degree murder, second-degree murder, terrorism, 2 counts each, possession of an instrument of crime, robbery, firearms violations, theft, receiving stolen property, criminal use of a communication facility, terroristic threats, defiant trespassing, abuse of a corpse. The terrorism charges represented unprecedented legal ground. Pennsylvania's terrorism statute had never resulted in a conviction before Commonwealth versus Mohn. Prosecutors argued that Justin's actions weren't simply patricide. They were calculated to intimidate federal employees, to spread fear, to coerce government workers into resignation through violence. The case proceeded as a bench trial. No jury. Judge Stephen A. Thorar would hear all evidence and render the verdict himself. This decision removed certain variables. No jury deliberation. No question of whether 12 citizens could reach unanimous agreement. The responsibility rested solely with Judge Thorar. The trial lasted 1 week. Testimony began on a Monday. By Friday, July 11, 2025, the judge was ready to announce his findings. Justin Mohn's defense attorney, Stephen M. Jones, faced a nearly impossible task. The evidence was overwhelming. The video Justin posted provided a confession. The physical evidence tied him to the crime scene. Digital forensics documented premeditation. Jones later described it as one of the most difficult cases of his career. The facts, he acknowledged, were horrendous for everyone involved. During the trial, Justin Mohn took the stand. For more than 2 hours, he testified under oath, answered questions from both his own attorney and prosecutors. His testimony became part of the permanent record. He claimed he intended to perform a citizen's arrest on his father. For treason, he said, for betraying the country through his work with the federal government. He described confronting Michael in the bathroom, informing him of the arrest. When his father resisted, Justin claimed, he had to resort to what he called Plan B. Prosecutors challenged this narrative systematically. They presented evidence that contradicted the citizen's arrest claim, highlighted the planning that preceded January 30th, the weapon purchase, the timing of the attack when Denise was at work, the immediate upload of the video. Justin showed no remorse during his testimony, offered no apology to his family. District Attorney Jennifer Shorn noted this in her statement following the verdict. Complete and utter lack of remorse, she said. An unimaginable, unfathomable crime. Before sentencing, the court heard victim impact statements. Denise Mohn, Michael's widow, sat clutching a photograph of her husband. She sobbed quietly while someone else read her statement aloud. The violation her family felt, the betrayal, the calculated, premeditated nature of what Justin had done. The horror of the video being posted online for thousands to see. Zachary Mohn, Justin's brother, spoke about their father's values, the life lessons Michael taught, the unwavering support he provided to all his children, even when they struggled, even when they failed. Michael never gave up on his family. Justin's sister also addressed the court. She described the father she remembered, his sense of humor, his love of music, his humility about his accomplishments, the hole his absence left in their lives. Judge Sarar acknowledged the extraordinary difficulty of the case. He noted that while Justin was found competent to stand trial, this didn't mean he didn't suffer from mental illness. Somewhere, the judge observed, this went off the rails. The case, he said, was an indictment of the mental health system itself. Then he delivered the verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of terrorism. Guilty on 13 of the 16 charges. The sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. On each murder count. To run consecutively. Additional sentences totaling up to 40 years on the remaining counts. All consecutive. No chance of parole. No possibility of release. Justin Mohn's response was characteristically detached. Not the outcome I wanted, he told Judge Sarar, but that's okay. He then suggested he should be used for a prisoner swap with Russia. The judge also issued a no-contact order. Justin Mohn was prohibited from any communication with his immediate family, his mother, his siblings, the people who had supported him through decades of struggle. District Attorney Shorn addressed reporters outside the courtroom. She emphasized that the conviction ensured community safety, that justice, while never capable of healing wounds, had been served. She acknowledged the Mohn family's unimaginable tragedy, the pain that would persist regardless of the verdict. Stephen Jones, Justin's defense attorney, spoke as well. The key takeaway, he said, was that Justin was still alive. The death penalty had been avoided. That was the best outcome they could achieve given the facts of the case. The Mohn case raised questions that extend beyond one family's destruction. It illuminated the intersection of mental health, online radicalization, and domestic terrorism. Pennsylvania's terrorism statute requires proof that actions were intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population or government entity. Prosecutors successfully argued that Justin Mohn's video, his call for others to target federal employees, met this threshold. The conviction established precedent. Future cases involving similar rhetoric and violence can now point to Commonwealth versus Mohn. Legal scholars noted the significance. Domestic terrorism cases often involve federal charges. Prosecutions under state terrorism statutes remain rare. Pennsylvania's success in securing a conviction could influence how other states approach similar cases. The case also highlighted the challenge of identifying threats before they materialize. Police had warned Justin about his online posts. His family sought mental health treatment for him. Yet no system existed to prevent what happened on January 30th. Judge Corr's comment about the mental health system reflected this reality. Justin showed signs of deteriorating mental health, delusions about his identity, letters to foreign governments claiming special status, online writings that grew increasingly detached from reality. But he was never involuntarily committed, never determined to be an immediate danger to himself or others through legal proceedings. The warnings remained just that, warnings. The question of online radicalization loomed large throughout the trial. Justin spent years engaging with communities that reinforced anti-government views. Forums where frustration morphed into ideology. Comment sections where grievances found validation. Platforms where extreme positions seemed reasonable because everyone expressing them shared similar anger. These communities exist in plain sight, not on the dark web, not in encrypted channels accessible only to insiders. On mainstream social media platforms. In forums anyone can join. In comment sections beneath news articles. They provide echo chambers where extreme beliefs intensify without counterbalance. Where newcomers arrive frustrated and leave radicalized. Where rhetoric escalates incrementally until violence seems not just acceptable but necessary. Experts in extremism noted patterns in Justin's trajectory that appear with disturbing regularity. The process begins with initial frustration rooted in personal circumstances, job loss, relationship failure, financial struggle, disappointment that seems disproportionate to the actual setback. This frustration seeks explanation, meaning, someone or something to blame. Then comes externalization of responsibility. The individual wasn't unsuccessful due to bad luck or poor decisions. The system was rigged. Powerful forces were working against people like him. Success was impossible not because of personal factors, but because of institutional barriers. This narrative provides comfort, removes personal accountability, transfers blame to abstract enemies. Next comes engagement with ideological communities that offer simple explanations for complex problems. Immigration policy explains unemployment. Federal bureaucracy explains economic struggles. Specific politicians or agency workers become symbols of everything wrong. The community provides not just explanations, but camaraderie. Others who understand, who share the same anger, who validate feelings that family and friends dismiss. As engagement deepens, rhetoric escalates. What begins as complaint about government efficiency evolves into allegations of treason. Discussion of policy failures becomes accusations of deliberate sabotage. Criticism of elected officials transforms into calls for action. The community rewards escalation. The angriest voices receive the most attention. The most extreme statements garner approval. Moderation gets ignored or attacked. Gradually, Violence moves from unthinkable to theoretical to justified to necessary. This progression happens through small steps. Each post slightly more extreme than the last. Each idea building on previous ones. Until the individual arrives at conclusions that would have seemed insane months earlier, but now feel like logical next steps. Throughout this process, real-world connections weaken. Family members who express concern get dismissed as uninformed. Friends who suggest moderation become suspect. Anyone questioning the ideology becomes part of the problem. The online community becomes primary. Real relationships become secondary. The individual becomes isolated in ways that accelerate radicalization rather than interrupting it. Justin Mohn's writings over years showed this exact pattern. Early posts complained about job market challenges. Later posts blamed specific agencies. Eventually, he was calling for revolution, accusing federal employees of treason, suggesting violence wasn't just justified but required. Each step seemed incremental to him, each belief built on previous ones, until he arrived at planning actual violence as if it were reasonable response rather than criminal act. The video Justin posted revealed this mindset in full. He spoke calmly, methodically, as if explaining a necessary civic action rather than confessing to patricide. As if killing his father and calling for others to target federal workers was logical conclusion to the ideology he had embraced. He believed his narrative, saw himself as righteous, couldn't comprehend the revulsion his actions would provoke beyond his bubble. This disconnect between Justin's self-perception and reality underscored the danger of unchecked radicalization. When individuals become convinced that violence serves a greater good, traditional deterrents lose effectiveness. Legal consequences become acceptable costs. Moral prohibitions get reframed as social conditioning. Family bonds become expendable obstacles to necessary action. Michael Mohn's death wasn't random violence. It was targeted, premeditated, rooted in an ideology that justified destroying the person who had supported Justin unconditionally for 33 years. The case forced communities to confront uncomfortable questions. How do we identify radicalization before violence occurs? What responsibility do online platforms bear for hosting extremist content? When does free speech cross into incitement? How do families intervene when loved ones show warning signs? No easy answers emerged from the Mohn trial, but the conviction sent a clear message. Ideology doesn't excuse violence. Mental health struggles don't absolve criminal responsibility. Actions have consequences, regardless of the beliefs that motivated them. Cases like Commonwealth versus Mohn force us to examine systems that failed, warning signs that were documented but not acted upon, online spaces that radicalize vulnerable individuals, mental health infrastructure that lacks resources for intervention before crisis. The Mohn family's tragedy resonates because it reveals how quickly normalcy can collapse. A father who worked for decades, a mother who discovered unthinkable loss, siblings who lost both a parent and a brother in a single day. If you're watching this documentary, you've followed an investigation from discovery to verdict, from evidence collection to legal precedent. The case is closed, the sentence handed down, life without parole. But the questions remain. What happens when someone you love descends into extremism? When their online activity becomes concerning? When warnings go unheeded? These aren't hypothetical questions for the Mohn family. They're the reality they'll carry forward. This documentary exists to document facts, to present evidence, to explain how investigators built a case that resulted in Pennsylvania's first terrorism conviction under state statute. It also exists to prompt reflection, to encourage awareness, to remind viewers that radicalization doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, one that leaves traces, one that offers opportunities for intervention. If this case revealed anything, it's that those opportunities were present. Police visited the home. Families sought mental health support. The warnings were there. The system failed to prevent tragedy. But individuals watching this can choose differently, can recognize warning signs in their own communities, can take threats seriously even when they come from familiar faces. Michael Mohn deserved better. His family deserved better. The question moving forward is whether society learns from what happened in Levittown. If you found this documentary valuable, if it made you think differently about domestic extremism or mental health or family dynamics, share it. Discuss it. Use it to start conversations that might prevent the next tragedy. Subscribe to this channel for investigations that go beyond headlines, that examine evidence with precision, that treat victims with dignity while holding perpetrators accountable. Leave a comment sharing your perspective. What stood out to you in this case? What questions do you have about the legal process? What concerns does this raise about online radicalization? Your engagement helps these documentaries reach wider audiences, helps ensure that cases like this aren't forgotten once the verdict is announced, helps keep pressure on systems that need reform. July 11, 2025. Judge Stephen A. Corr announced guilty verdicts on 13 charges. Justin D. Mohn received 2 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. Pennsylvania's first conviction under its state terrorism statute became official court record. The legal chapter closed. The investigative work concluded. The case file joined thousands of others documenting human violence and its consequences. But for Denise Mohn, for Zachary and his sister, for everyone who knew Michael, the case will never truly close. They carry forward without a husband, father, and friend whose life ended in a bathroom at the hands of someone he loved unconditionally. Michael F. Mohn worked 4 decades as a civil engineer. He read books, played guitar, exercised daily, supported his children through struggles and successes. He returned to work part-time after retirement because he found purpose in service. On January 30th, 2024, his son ended that life, used a legally purchased firearm, followed through with actions that demonstrated premeditation and calculation, posted evidence online for the world to see, then fled to a National Guard facility carrying plans for additional violence. The investigation that followed was thorough. Forensic evidence, digital footprints, witness testimony, legal proceedings that established precedent. A verdict that ensured Justin Mohn will spend the remainder of his life in prison. This is how justice functions. Methodically, based on evidence, following procedures designed to ensure fairness even in cases where facts seem overwhelming. The Mohn case will be studied in law schools, referenced in terrorism prosecutions, examined by researchers investigating radicalization. It will appear in textbooks and legal journals and documentary films like this one. But it began as something much simpler. A family living in a Philadelphia suburb. A father supporting his adult son through difficulty. A son whose frustrations and delusions eventually consumed everything. The tragedy is that it didn't have to happen this way. Intervention points existed. Warning signs were documented. Systems designed to prevent exactly this type of violence were engaged. They weren't enough. The question facing communities across the country is whether similar cases can be prevented in the future, whether mental health systems can be strengthened, whether online radicalization can be identified and disrupted earlier, whether families will have better tools for intervention when loved ones show concerning behavior. These questions don't diminish the horror of what Justin Mohn did. They don't excuse his choices or reduce his accountability. He was found competent. He made decisions. He acted with premeditation. He showed no remorse. But they acknowledge that tragedies like the Mohn case emerge from systemic failures as well as individual choices. That preventing future violence requires more than prosecuting perpetrators after the fact. Michael Mohn's legacy shouldn't be defined solely by how he died. It should include 4 decades of public service, a family raised with strong values, a life lived with humility and purpose, a father who never stopped supporting his children even when doing so became difficult. His death was senseless, preventable, rooted in ideology that justified the unjustifiable. His life was meaningful, full, worthy of remembrance beyond the circumstances of its end. This documentary has presented facts, evidence, legal proceedings, context, the full scope of an investigation from crime scene to sentencing. Now those facts exist in the public record, available for examination, for learning, for prevention. The Mohn family will continue grieving, healing, carrying forward without Michael. They deserve privacy, respect, space to rebuild lives shattered by violence. The community will continue grappling with what happened in their quiet suburb, processing the reality that extreme violence can emerge from familiar places. The legal system will continue citing Commonwealth versus Mohn in future terrorism prosecutions. The precedent is set, the standard established. And somewhere, in communities across the country, individuals are following similar patterns. Externalizing frustrations. Finding validation in extremist communities. Escalating rhetoric. Moving closer to action. Whether those patterns result in more tragedies or successful interventions depends on choices made by families, mental health professionals, law enforcement, online platforms, and communities. The investigation into Justin Mohn is complete. The verdict final. The sentence permanent. The question of what comes next remains open.